a lot of thanks to IRCAM and especially Frederick for being a really good collaborator during the planning of this event. But I want to talk a little bit, a few minutes, about why I think it's interesting to run such a symposium. And a few days ago I went to Cité de la Musique, which is an instrument museum here in Paris, and I kind of stumbled onto this painting and I took a picture of it, and I thought it was quite interesting. What you see here, this man kind of looking at the score, and there she is instructing or pointing at the score as the kind of this metaphysical entity that kind of points to something that is concrete and composed, and I started to think about this in the context of this kind of emphasis that our Western culture has with the book. That here we have Aristotle and Plato. Well, in the other way around, Plato and Aristotle with their books. And the book is the key point. And you see that in Western art. You see the illiterate child and Mary, with the book, reading a book, and the book is always there as something that we have with us, and something that directs to truth, that connects to truth and reality, and so I started thinking about the score in this context, and this, I think there's a German concept called Werktraue, to be true to the work, to perform precisely what the composer writes down. And there's a good reason for that, of course, before recording, that you wanted to convey a piece of some sort. But Bela Bartok said, when he started thinking about recording, he said the best notation is, of course, sound recording, the groves on the vinyl. That's the best notation. But with the advent of machines, we can start to notate really precisely. We can start to notate fully. Any parameter can be controlled in programming languages or synthesizers. But that then creates an interesting, and you see that in the 1950s, it creates an interesting kind of dilemma. Why notate if the machine can do everything? And then we get into in the 50s maybe an interesting idea of opening up for interpretation and flexibility. And Umberto Eco wrote this book, The Open Work, where he analyzes pieces by people like Poseur, Stockhaus, and Wolf. So what I think is interesting now with this history since the 50s is how we continue this openness or notation for digital instruments, for new instruments that are always in flux. We create these devices, these interfaces that are, they're not going to extend through time like the cello or the clarinet. These are technologies that are constantly changing. So the question is, how do you notate for them, and why would you notate for them? And we then have a situation, which I was talking with Pierre yesterday, a situation where the composer becomes an instrument designer and a performer at the same time. And then we have this question: why would we compose for others then? If the composer has become the instrument designer and the performer. But then, if we look back a little bit, there is something beautiful about creating something for someone else. It's like a gift. It's a gift to be able to give someone something to interpret, and it's also a gift to be an interpreter and get this piece to explore and study and kind of interpret in your own way. So there's something extremely kind of enticing and fun about the musical score, something that we will probably continue using in digital media with digital software and digital instruments. And that's really the kind of question that I'm interested in, and the reason I wanted to run this symposium. I wanted to invite people from very different backgrounds. Everyone who's talking here today has a very different and distinct practice that relates to musical notation. And I hope that the day is going to be a kind of a good day, and where we can ask and try to reflect on these questions that relate to notation in the 21st century with contemporary technologies. So the format, it's very tight, as you can see, and there's a good reason for that. I didn't want to, run a conference with 30 minutes papers, something like that. I'm more interested in talking over lunch, over coffee, and the round table. And tomorrow we have a smaller workshop where we will continue discussing these themes of the day. And for that reason, we have 10 minutes presentations. You can see that 6 presentations should be an hour then, but we have 1.5 hours there. So in practice, we have 15 minutes per presentation, but there is always time to, you need time to swap computers and so on. So we have then 10 minutes presentation and 5 minutes for Q&A and swapping computers, and the next person will start 15 minutes after the other. So we have a timekeeper here, Chris Kiefer, and he'll be very strict.
What are you going to throw, Chris?
Yes.
Tomatoes.
Yes, exactly. I would be careful if you go over time with him. I also want to thank, finally, Einar Torfi for being very generous of giving me the permission to use one of his scores on this web page. So it's almost like some kind of a branding. But, yes, thank you very much, Einar. So without further ado, can I introduce Jonathan Impett?